The beautiful crystal cities of Zalani Prime turned black under the acid rain. What had once sparkled like diamonds in the morning sun now melted like ice cream on a hot day. The screams of millions echoed across the planet as the Kethmoran bioships hung in the sky like dark clouds of death. Admiral Thexara watched from her flagship as another world died. Her 4 arms gripped the command rail so tight that her blue skin turned white at the joints. The Zalani had been proud warriors. Their crystal technology was among the best in the galaxy. They had fought bravely for 3 days. None of it mattered now. "Admiral, the Zalani defense fleet is gone," reported her communications officer. The young Vrex's voice shook as he spoke. "The last ship just went dark." Thexara closed her 6 eyes and tried not to think about the families down there. The children who would never grow up. The artists who would never create again. The Kethmoran did not just kill. They absorbed everything. Every piece of technology. Every genetic trait. Every memory. Nothing remained except empty space where a civilization used to be. "Take us out of orbit," she ordered. "Signal the fleet. We retreat to Rally Point 7. The Galactic Defense Coalition had formed 2 years ago when the Kethmoran first appeared in their sector. 12 different species had put aside old wars and trade disputes to face this new threat. It had not been enough. Nothing seemed to be enough. The Kethmoran were not like other conquerors. Most armies wanted territory or resources. The Kethmoran wanted everything. Their ships were alive, growing and changing with each battle. Their soldiers could regrow lost limbs in minutes. Their minds were connected in a vast network that made them perfectly coordinated in battle. Worst of all, they learned. Every weapon used against them became useless after the first few hits. Their bioarmor adapted to energy beams, kinetic rounds, even nuclear explosions. They took the best traits from every species they conquered and made themselves stronger. The Torgan Republic had fallen first. Their famous war mechs, machines that had never lost a battle, were torn apart like toys. The Kethmoran absorbed the mech technology and grew mechanical arms from their ships. The Ashanti Collective came next. Their telepathic abilities had made them excellent spies and negotiators. The Kethmoran consumed their psychic networks and became even better at reading enemy intentions. One by one, 17 star systems had gone dark. Billions of lives ended, thousands of years of culture and knowledge. Absorbed into the Kethmoran Collective, Thexara's fleet jumped to hyperspace just as the first Kethmoran ground forces landed on Zalani Prime. She knew that in 3 days, maybe 4, there would be nothing left but another empty system with Kethmoran biostations growing like cancer. Where cities used to stand, Rally Point 7, was a hidden asteroid base in the outer rim. Ships from across the galaxy gathered. They're like wounded animals seeking shelter. The mighty Draconian Empire, reduced to 50 ships from 1,000. The peaceful flower worlds, their beautiful garden ships now armed for war. Even the mysterious energy beings had taken physical form to join the fight. The main meeting room buzzed with angry voices in dozens of languages. Universal translators worked overtime as species that had never spoken before argued about what to do next. "We should surrender," said Ambassador Krex of the Harmony Worlds. His usually cheerful demeanor had cracked under the stress. "Maybe they will be merciful if we do not resist?" Merciful? General Stomp of the Rhino Warriors slammed his massive fist on the table. "They do not know the word. They eat civilizations like we eat food. Then we make our final stand at the Cerberus Nebula," suggested war leader Zack of the Hive clans. "Force them to come through the narrow passages. Make them pay for every meter." Thexara listened to the debates with growing sadness. She had heard these same arguments after every defeat. Surrender, flee, or die fighting. None of them offered hope. The Kethmoran were simply too strong, too adaptable, too unified. "Admiral," a quiet voice interrupted her thoughts. She looked down to see Lieutenant Kix, a small, furry intelligence officer. His species, the Collectors, were known for gathering information from across the galaxy. "What is it, Lieutenant?" "There have been some unusual transmissions from Sector 7, Kix said nervously. "A young species has been broadcasting on emergency channels. They claim they want to help." Thexara almost laughed. "Help? What could a new species possibly do that we cannot?" "They call themselves humans, Admiral. Their transmissions are strange. They seem to know about the Kethmoran already. They say they have experience with impossible situations." Around them, the argument continued. Some wanted to split the fleet and hide in different sectors. Others suggested a kamikaze attack on the main Kethmoran bioship. A few spoke of fleeing to other galaxies entirely. Have you studied these humans? Texara asked. Kix pulled out a datapad. What little we know is confusing. They come from a death world with extreme weather, dangerous animals, and constant natural disasters. They fight each other constantly, but somehow work together when threatened. Their technology is primitive compared to most coalition members. Then why would they think they can help? I do not know, Admiral, but their last transmission was unusual. They said, and I quote, "We have never met an unstoppable force, but we have a lot of experience being an immovable object." The arguing around them grew louder. Someone mentioned evacuating to the far edge of the galaxy. Another suggested trying to contact other galaxies for help. The desperation in the room was thick enough to cut with a blade. Texara looked at the star charts showing Kethmoran advance. Red markers showed conquered systems. Orange markers showed systems under attack. The pattern was clear and terrible. The Kethmoran moved like a virus, spreading through the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. In 6 months, maybe less, they would reach the core worlds. Earth, the human homeworld, was right in their path. These humans, she said to Kix, do they understand what they are volunteering for? Their transmissions suggest they do, Admiral. They have requested detailed information about Kethmoran capabilities, battle footage, and... Kix paused, looking puzzled. They asked for psychological profiles of Kethmoran individuals if such things exist. That was odd. Most species focused on weapons and tactics when facing the Kethmoran. Why would humans care about psychology? Send them everything they requested, Texara decided. If they want to throw their lives away, that is their choice. But perhaps they will buy us a few more days to evacuate civilians. Kix nodded and hurried away to prepare the data packages. The meeting was breaking up with no real decisions made. Leaders returned to their ships, faces grim with the knowledge that they were probably planning funerals for their entire species. Texara remained in the meeting room, staring at the star charts. Somewhere out there, the Kethmoran fleet was growing stronger. They would absorb Zilani crystal technology into their bioships. Their warriors would gain Zilani regenerative abilities. Their minds would process Zilani mathematical innovations. And somewhere else, on a small blue world in Sector 7, a young species called humans was preparing to face an enemy that had never known defeat. She almost felt sorry for them. They seemed brave, these humans. It was a shame they would die so quickly. The darkness between the stars had never seemed so vast or so empty. Soon, Texara feared it would be all that remained. Captain Elena Vasquez stepped off the transport shuttle and into the main docking bay of Rally Point 7. The massive space station buzzed with activity as ships from dozens of species prepared for what many believed would be their final battle. The air smelled of fuel, fear, and desperation. Behind her, 30 human ships sat in formation like small metal sharks among whales. Compared to the massive biocruisers of the Draconian Empire or the crystal formations of the surviving Zilani fleet, the human vessels looked tiny and fragile. Admiral Texara waited at the airlock with a delegation of coalition leaders. The tall, blue-skinned Altarian studied the humans with obvious confusion. Elena could see why. Her crew of 200 looked nothing like the thousands of warriors that stepped off other ships. They wore simple gray uniforms instead of powered armor. They carried basic weapons instead of energy cannons. Captain Vasquez, Admiral Texara said through the universal translator. Thank you for coming. Though I must ask, is this your entire fleet? Yes, Admiral, Elena replied. 30 ships, 6,000 crew members total. We came as soon as we received your data packet. General Stomp of the Rhino Warriors snorted loudly. His massive frame towered over the humans. 6,000? We have lost that many soldiers in single battles against the Kethmoran. Elena looked up at the 8-foot-tall warrior without flinching. We understand the odds, General. That is why we are here. War leader Zack of the Hive clan studied the humans with compound eyes. Your species is young. You have not faced the Kethmoran before. Perhaps you do not understand what you are volunteering for. We have studied your reports, Elena said calmly. We know what the Kethmoran can do. We know they have never been defeated. We know they adapt to every weapon and tactic used against them. Then why are you here? Asked Ambassador Krex. His usual diplomatic smile was nowhere to be seen. Elena smiled, and something in her expression made several aliens step back. Because someone has to be first. Admiral Thexara led them to the main briefing room. The walls were covered with tactical displays showing Kethmoran fleet movements, weapon analyses, and casualty reports. The numbers were staggering. Entire armadas reduced to debris fields. Worlds stripped bare of all life. The Kethmoran hegemony is unlike anything we have faced, Thexara began. Their ships are living organisms that grow and adapt. Watch this. The main screen showed battle footage from the fall of Torgan Prime. Massive human-built mechs fired energy weapons at Kethmoran bioships. For the first few hits, the alien vessels took damage. Then their hulls began to change, growing reflective patches that bounced the energy beams harmlessly into space. Adaptive bioarmor, Thexara explained. Within minutes, our weapons become useless. The footage switched to show Kethmoran warriors boarding a coalition ship. The aliens moved with perfect coordination, their actions synchronized as if controlled by a single mind. When coalition soldiers shot them, the wounds healed almost instantly. Regenerative healing and quantum-linked consciousness, the Admiral continued. They feel no pain, no fear, and share all knowledge instantly across their entire fleet. Elena watched without expression as the coalition defenders were overwhelmed. The Kethmoran did not just kill them. They dragged the wounded back to their bioships for absorption into the collective. Most disturbing of all, Thexara said, they learn from every species they absorb. They have gained the strength of the Rhino warriors, the crystal technology of the Zilani, the telepathic abilities of the Ashanti. Each victory makes them stronger. The briefing continued for 2 hours. Technical specifications, battle reports, psychological assessments. The picture that emerged was of an enemy that seemed truly unstoppable. An enemy that had consumed 17 star systems without ever retreating from a battle. When it was over, Admiral Thexara looked at the human delegation. Now you understand. The Kethmoran are perfect killers. They cannot be reasoned with, outfought, or escaped. What do you propose to do? Elena stood up and walked to the tactical display. She studied the Kethmoran ship designs, their battle formations, their movement patterns. Her team of officers joined her, speaking in low voices and pointing at various details. Your reports are very thorough, Elena said finally. But they focus entirely on what the Kethmoran can do. What about what they cannot do? War leader Zach's antennae twitched with irritation. They have no weaknesses. That is why they are unstoppable. Everything has weaknesses, Elena replied. Even perfection. Especially perfection. Dr. Sarah Chen, the human expedition's xenobiologist, stepped forward. May we examine the Kethmoran specimens you have collected? Specimens? Admiral Thexara looked confused. We have some tissue samples from destroyed bioships, but nothing living. The Kethmoran self-destruct rather than be captured. That is interesting, Doctor, Chen said. They choose death over capture. That suggests they have something to hide. Or something to protect, added Commander James Park, the human fleet's tactical officer. Elena turned to face the coalition leaders. We need 72 hours to analyze your data and prepare our strategy. General Stomp laughed, a sound like boulders grinding together. Strategy? Child, we have been fighting these monsters for 2 years. Every strategy has been tried and failed. Every alien strategy, Elena corrected. But you have never tried a human strategy. What makes humans so special? Ambassador Krex asked. Elena's smile returned, cold and sharp. We are very good at breaking things that are supposed to be unbreakable. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Human technicians swarmed over the coalition data, analyzing everything from molecular scans of Kethmoran biometal to recorded communications from their quantum networks. They asked strange questions that puzzled the alien scientists. Do the Kethmoran feel pain? Dr. Chen asked. Do they dream? Wondered Dr. Lisa Park, the expedition's psychologist. How do they handle stress? Elena inquired. The coalition experts had no answers. No one had ever thought to ask such questions about the Kethmoran. They were treated as a force of nature like a storm or earthquake. You did not ask if hurricanes had feelings, but the humans kept digging. They studied recordings of Kethmoran voices, looking for emotional patterns. They analyzed the design of bioships, searching for signs of individual variation. They even requested samples of Kethmoran waste products to understand their metabolism. "What are you looking for?" Admiral Thexara asked Elena on the second day. "The thing they do not want us to find," Elena replied. "Every species that has faced the Kethmoran has focused on their strengths. We are looking for their fears." "The Kethmoran do not know fear," General Stomp insisted. "Everything that lives knows fear," Elena said quietly. "Even predators are afraid of something. We just need to figure out what." By the end of the third day, the human ships had been modified with equipment that baffled the Coalition engineers. Strange transmission arrays, unusual missile pods, and boarding shuttles filled with equipment that looked more like medical supplies than weapons. "Are you ready?" Admiral Thexara asked. Elena nodded. "The Kethmoran fleet will reach the Cerberus Nebula in 18 hours. We will be waiting for them." "With 30 ships against 300? "With 30 ships and an idea they have never faced before." As the human fleet prepared to depart, Elena stood on her bridge looking out at the vast Coalition armada. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species, all hoping that these strange humans from a distant world might somehow succeed where everyone else had failed. The odds were impossible. The enemy was unstoppable. The stakes could not be higher. Elena smiled. Her species had built their entire civilization on making the impossible look easy. The Cerberus Nebula glowed like a dying fire against the blackness of space. Clouds of purple and gold gas twisted around ancient stellar remnants, creating natural barriers that had protected merchant ships from pirates for centuries. Now it would serve as the battleground for what might be the galaxy's final stand. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching long-range sensors as the Kethmoran fleet approached. 300 bioships moved through space like a living nightmare, their hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of hunger and death. "Coalition fleet reports ready?" "Captain," announced Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. Elena nodded. Behind them, arranged in defensive formations throughout the nebula, waited over 400 ships from 12 different species. The largest combined fleet in galactic history, and probably the last. "Kethmoran fleet will reach engagement range in 30 minutes, reported Commander Park from Tactical. "They are maintaining standard approach formation." "Standard for them," Elena murmured. "Overwhelming force, direct assault, adapt and absorb. They have never needed another strategy." Dr. Chen looked up from her station. "Psychological warfare pods are ready for deployment. The nanobots are loaded with the new viral package. Hacking equipment is standing by," added Dr. Lisa Park. "If we can breach their quantum network, we can deliver the psychological payload directly to their collective consciousness." Elena studied the tactical display. The Kethmoran formation was beautiful in its efficiency. The bioships moved with perfect coordination, like cells in a vast organism. No wasted motion, no hesitation, no individual initiative. Just pure collective purpose. "All ships, this is Captain Vasquez," she broadcast on the fleet command frequency. "Remember, we are not trying to destroy them. We are trying to break them. Target their certainty, not their hulls." The first Kethmoran ships emerged from hyperspace like dark flowers blooming in the void. Immediately, the Coalition fleet opened fire. Energy beams and kinetic rounds filled space as hundreds of weapons targeted the bioships. For a few minutes, the alien vessels took damage. Hull plating cracked. Biometal bled green fluids into space. Several smaller ships spun out of formation. Then, as always, the adaptation began. The Kethmoran hulls shifted and changed. Armor plates grew thicker and more reflective. New defensive structures sprouted from their surfaces. Within 10 minutes, the Coalition barrage was having no effect at all. "Phase 1 complete," Elena announced calmly. "The enemy has adapted to our conventional weapons. Commence Phase 2. The human ships launched their first wave of missiles. But instead of targeting the bioships' hulls or engines, the missiles exploded in clouds of microscopic nanobots that swarmed toward the enemy fleet. Admiral Thexara's voice crackled over the radio from her flagship. "Captain Vasquez, your nanobots appear to be having no effect." They are bouncing off the enemy bioarmor. Working as intended, Admiral, Elena replied. Stand by for Phase 3. The real attack began not in space but in the quantum realm. Human hackers, led by Dr. Lisa Park, had spent weeks studying captured Kethmoran communication equipment. They had found something the aliens never expected anyone to look for, a backdoor in their own network security. The Kethmoran collective consciousness was built on absolute trust. No individual would ever betray the whole, so they had no defenses against infiltration from within. But humans were not part of their collective. Humans were individuals who specialized in thinking like their enemies. Breach successful, Dr. Park announced. We are inside their quantum network, Elena smiled grimly. Begin psychological bombardment. Across the Kethmoran fleet, something unprecedented happened. Individual bioships began receiving transmissions directly into their collective consciousness. Not tactical data or battle orders, but something far more disturbing. Images flooded their shared minds. Humans laughing in the face of death. Human soldiers staying behind to cover their comrades' escape, knowing they would die. Humans caring for alien wounded even in the middle of battle. Humans choosing cooperation over absorption, mercy over efficiency. The footage showed human history, wars, disasters, suffering, but also something the Kethmoran had never encountered. Humans helping their enemies. Humans choosing hope over logic. Humans building something greater than themselves through individual sacrifice. For the first time in their collective memory, the Kethmoran experienced confusion. What is the strategic value of this behavior? The query rippled through their network. Why do they choose inefficiency? How can weakness create strength? The nanobots, meanwhile, had not been weapons at all. They were delivery systems carrying engineered viruses designed by Dr. Chen's team. Not viruses to kill, but viruses to cause something the Kethmoran had not felt in millennia: physical discomfort. The regenerative healing that made them unstoppable began working against them. Instead of healing cleanly, their tissues developed chronic inflammation. Nothing life-threatening, but a constant, nagging pain that their healing factor could not eliminate. For a species that had forgotten what suffering felt like, the sensation was psychologically devastating. Report, demanded the Kethmoran fleet mind. Why are our warriors reporting decreased efficiency? Unknown biological agent, came the response. Healing systems are functioning, but subjects report discomfort. The concept had no proper translation in their language. Discomfort without damage was meaningless to beings who saw pain only as information about injury. Elena watched the enemy formation begin to show signs of disorder. Ships moved slightly out of position. Response times to orders increased by fractions of a second. The perfect coordination was developing tiny flaws. Phase 4, she ordered. Human boarding shuttles launched from the fleet, but instead of targeting strategic locations on the bioships, they aimed for the most heavily damaged vessels. The shuttles carried not assault troops but medical teams. The Kethmoran defending the damaged ships prepared for normal boarding action. Violent, brutal, efficient. Instead, humans in white medical uniforms began treating wounded aliens they had been shooting at moments before. What is this? The Kethmoran defenders demanded of their collective. The images broadcast through their quantum network showed human medics working frantically to save alien lives. The same humans who had been fighting them were now trying to heal them. Is this a form of psychological warfare? The fleet mind queried. Analysis suggests genuine medical treatment, came the confused response. The concept shattered something fundamental in the Kethmoran worldview. Enemies were for absorption or destruction. There was no third option in their philosophy. Yet these humans seemed to believe in something their collective mind could not process. Dr. Chen's voice came over Elena's comm. Captain, we are getting strange readings from the enemy bioships. Their quantum network is showing massive data conflicts. Conflicts about what? Everything. Their basic assumptions about existence are being questioned by their own collective consciousness. Elena nodded. Commence final phase. She activated the fleet-wide communication system, but instead of broadcasting to the coalition ships, she transmitted directly to the Kethmoran fleet. Her message went out on all frequencies, in every language the humans had learned. Kethmoran Fleet Mind, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the human fleet. I wish to speak with your command authority. Silence filled space for long moments. Then a voice like grinding metal spoke through the quantum link. You are enemies. Enemies are for absorption or destruction, are we? Elena asked. Your people have been absorbing the strength of other species for centuries. But what have you gained? Are you happier than when you started? Are you more fulfilled? Have you grown as individuals? Another pause. Longer this time. Happiness and fulfillment are inefficient concepts, are they? Then why are you confused right now? Why are your ships moving out of formation? Why are your warriors asking questions they have never asked before? The Kethmaran fleet mind did not respond, but Elena could see the enemy formation becoming more disorganized. Individual ships were actually stopping, hanging motionless in space as their crews grappled with concepts their collective had never encountered. You have been unstoppable because you never questioned your purpose, Elena continued, but now you are questioning. You are thinking as individuals instead of just as a collective. You are experiencing doubt. Doubt is weakness, the fleet mind responded, but its voice carried less certainty. Is it? Or is doubt the beginning of growth? The first step toward choosing your own path instead of following programming? Across the Kethmoran fleet, something remarkable was happening. Individual bioships were beginning to disconnect from the collective network. Warriors were asking to speak with their human prisoners instead of absorbing them. The perfect unity that had made them unstoppable was fracturing into billions of individual minds. For the first time in their history, the Kethmoran were thinking for themselves. The Kethmaran bioship consuming tide drifted in space, its bioluminescent patterns flickering with uncertainty. Inside its living corridors, Warrior Prime Theknor stood motionless, experiencing something that had no name in the collective vocabulary. For the first time in 3 centuries of existence, Theknor was alone in his own mind. The quantum link to the fleet mind remained active, but the constant flow of shared thoughts and unified purpose had diminished. In its place was something terrifying and wonderful: individual awareness. Around him, other warriors moved with unusual hesitation. Their movements, once perfectly coordinated, now showed tiny variations. Some tilted their heads as if listening to sounds only they could hear. Others stared at their own clawed hands as if seeing them for the first time. Warrior Prime, one of his subordinates approached. The title felt strange now, implying hierarchy in what had always been perfect equality. The human prisoners? They have made a request. Theknor's triple hearts beat with irregular rhythms. What request? They wish to speak with us. Not to the collective. To us as individuals. The concept should have been meaningless. Individuals were just components of the greater whole. But somehow, standing in his ship's command chamber, Theknor felt the weight of personal choice for the first time. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Defiance, Captain Vasquez monitored the remarkable transformation taking place across the enemy fleet. Her tactical display showed Kethmaran ships breaking formation, some stopping completely, others moving in directions that served no strategic purpose. Captain, Dr. Lisa Park reported from her psychology station, we are receiving thousands of individual communication requests from Kethmaran personnel. They want to talk. About what? Everything. Their purpose, their history, the meaning of individual existence. It is as if they have awakened from a dream and are trying to understand reality for the first time. Elena studied the readings. The viral infection delivered by the nanobots was spreading through the enemy fleet, but not in the way her team had expected. The chronic pain was triggering psychological responses that rippled through their quantum network like cracks in glass. Dr. Chen, what is your assessment of the biological effects? The xenobiologist looked up from her analysis. The pain response is working better than we hoped, Captain. The Kethmaran regenerative systems cannot process chronic discomfort. Their minds are experiencing something between confusion and panic. And the psychological warfare, Dr. Lisa Park smiled grimly. Complete success. Their collective consciousness is fragmenting. Individuals are disconnecting from the hive mind to think independently. Some ships have gone completely silent on the quantum network. Elena nodded. Prepare for Phase 5. I am going aboard their flagship. Commander Park looked alarmed. Captain, that is suicide. Even confused, they are still deadly. No, Elena said quietly. They are not. Not anymore. The most dangerous thing about the Kethmoran was their absolute certainty. Take that away, and they become just another species trying to figure out their place in the universe. 2 hours later, Elena's shuttle docked with the massive Kethmaran flagship. The bioship's living airlock sealed around her craft with disturbing organic sounds. She wore only a standard EVA suit and carried no weapons. Behind her, Dr. Chen and Dr. Park followed with medical equipment and recording devices. The corridor they entered pulsed with veins of light. The walls were warm to the touch, slightly damp, clearly alive. But something was wrong with the ship's biological rhythms. The lights flickered irregularly. The temperature fluctuated. Even the ship seemed to be experiencing confusion. They were met by a delegation of Kethmoran warriors, but these were unlike any the coalition had faced before. Their movements were uncertain, their postures suggesting curiosity rather than aggression. Some even appeared to be nervous. "I am Warrior Prime Theknor," their leader announced through a translation device. "I speak for myself." The last word seemed to cause him physical discomfort. Elena removed her helmet, breathing the ship's alien atmosphere. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez. Thank you for agreeing to meet." "We do not understand what is happening to us," Theknor said. "The certainty is gone. The unity is broken. We feel separate." "You feel individual," Elena corrected gently. "It is not broken. It is growth." Dr. Chen began scanning the warriors with her medical equipment. The readings showed elevated stress hormones, increased neural activity in regions associated with self-awareness, and the chronic inflammatory response from the engineered virus. "Are you in pain?" Dr. Chen asked. Theknor's response was delayed, as if he had to consider the question carefully. "We feel discomfort, but also something else, something we have no words for." "Can you describe it?" "It is wonder, fear, excitement. The concepts are alien to us," he paused. "Before we knew our purpose absolutely. Consume, absorb, expand the collective. Now we question." Elena walked deeper into the ship, followed by the Kethmoran delegation. They passed chambers where alien warriors sat motionless, staring at walls or examining their own reflections in polished surfaces. The ship's biometric systems showed they were not injured or dying, but profoundly changed. "What do you question?" Elena asked. "Everything," Theknor replied. "Why do we consume others instead of learning from them? Why do we seek uniformity instead of diversity? Why do we fear individual thought?" He paused again. "Why do we feel fear at all?" They reached the ship's command center, a vast chamber with walls that displayed the quantum network connecting all Kethmoran vessels. But the display was fragmented now, showing disconnected nodes and failing links. "Your collective is dying," Dr. Park observed. "No," Theknor said. "It is transforming. We are becoming many instead of one." At the center of the chamber sat the fleet mind's physical avatar, a massive biomechanical construct that served as the central processing unit for the entire armada. But it was convulsing, its thought patterns chaotic and conflicted. Elena approached the avatar carefully. "Fleet mind, can you hear me?" The response was a mixture of voices, no longer unified. I am confused. The certainty is gone. Individual thoughts contaminate the collective. The pattern is breaking." "Good," Elena said simply. "Good?" Multiple voices spoke at once. "How can the destruction of perfection be good?" "Because perfection is death," Elena replied. "Growth requires mistakes, learning requires questions, wisdom requires doubt. Your perfection was actually stagnation." She gestured to the fragmenting display. "Look at what you are becoming. Not one mind with one thought, but millions of minds with millions of thoughts. Each warrior can now choose their own path, develop their own ideas, form their own relationships." Theknor stepped forward. "But without unity we have no purpose, no direction, no certainty." "You have something better," Elena said. "You have choice. You can decide for yourselves what kind of beings you want to be." The fleet mind's avatar shuddered. "Choice is chaos. Individual will leads to conflict." "Sometimes," Elena admitted. "But it also leads to art, to love, to growth beyond what any collective could imagine. Your species could become something greater than the sum of its parts, not by absorption, but by cooperation." Dr. Chen approached one of the warriors and offered him a medical scanner. "Here, try this. Examine me. Learn about human biology not by absorbing me, but by studying me." The warrior took the device hesitantly. As he scanned Dr. Chen, his expression changed from confusion to fascination. "Your cellular structure is so different from ours. How do you maintain coherence without biomechanical integration?" "Evolution," Dr. Chen replied. millions of years of adaptation and change. We became strong not by taking the best parts of other species, but by developing our own unique solutions to survival. Across the chamber, other warriors began experimenting with individual action. Some examined human technology. Others asked questions about emotions, relationships, and the concept of personal identity. The Fleet Mind's avatar spoke again, its voice now clearly multiple entities rather than one.
If we abandon the collective, what becomes of our purpose?
Our destiny, Elena smiled. You get to choose a new one. Together, but as individuals. You could explore the galaxy not as conquerors, but as researchers. You could share knowledge instead of absorbing it. You could become allies instead of predators. Theknor looked at his fellow warriors, then back at Elena. And if we choose wrongly? Then you learn from your mistakes and choose again. That is what growth means. Throughout the chamber, Kethmoran warriors were discovering the concept of personal preference. Some were drawn to the human medical equipment. Others seemed fascinated by the artwork Dr. Park had brought, images of human creativity that served no functional purpose except beauty. The transformation was spreading through the quantum network to other ships. Reports came in of Kethmoran warriors requesting to speak with coalition prisoners, of bioships powering down their weapons, of entire vessels disconnecting from the collective to think independently. The unstoppable force had not been stopped by superior firepower or better tactics. It had been stopped by the introduction of doubt, choice, and the radical idea that existence might have more meaning as individuals than as a collective. The galaxy's most feared enemy was learning to become something entirely new. Themselves. 6 months after the Battle of Cerberus Nebula, the galaxy looked very different. Admiral Thexera stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching something that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Below them, a massive construction project was taking place in orbit around the former Kethmoran stronghold of Nexus Prime. Kethmoran bioships worked alongside coalition vessels, building not weapons of war but research stations. Former warriors who had once consumed civilizations now collaborated with the species they had tried to destroy. The sight still made Thexera shake her head in disbelief. Admiral, her communications officer announced, Captain Vasquez is requesting permission to come aboard. Send her up, Thexera replied. She was curious to speak with the human who had done the impossible. Elena arrived a few minutes later, looking tired but satisfied. The past months had been busy ones for humanity. They had gone from being an unknown species to the galaxy's most sought-after mediators and counselors. Admiral, Elena said with a slight smile, thank you for agreeing to meet. Captain, Thexera replied, I wanted to thank you personally, and to ask you something that has been bothering me for months. What is that? How did you know it would work? How did you know that psychological warfare would succeed, where centuries of military might had failed? Elena walked to the observation window and looked down at the construction project. A group of young Kethmoran, born after the collective's dissolution, were learning engineering from Zilani crystal workers. Their biomechanical bodies had been modified to be less threatening, more suited to creation than destruction. We did not know it would work, Elena admitted, but we understood something about the Kethmoran that other species missed. What was that? They were perfect, and perfection is the enemy of growth. Elena pointed to a section of the construction where former enemies worked side by side. Every species that fought the Kethmoran tried to match their strengths. You built bigger weapons, stronger armor, better tactics, but you were fighting the symptoms, not the disease. The disease? Certainty. The Kethmoran were unstoppable because they never questioned their purpose. They had no doubt, no individual thought, no possibility of changing their minds. That made them efficient, but it also made them fragile. Thexera considered this. So you introduced doubt into their system. We introduced choice, Elena corrected. We showed them that there were other ways to exist, other purposes to pursue. Once they realized they could choose to be something different, their collective consciousness could not hold together. Through the observation window, they watched a remarkable sight. Theknor, the former warrior prime, was leading a mixed group of humans and Kethmoran in what appeared to be a philosophical discussion. The alien who had once commanded bioships in battle was now studying human literature and poetry. Theknor has become quite the scholar, Elena noted. He published a paper last month on the relationship between individual consciousness and collective wisdom. It has been very well received in academic circles. And the others? How many Kethmoran chose to abandon their old ways? About 60%, Elena replied. The rest split into smaller collectives or chose to continue the old path in distant galaxies. We did not try to stop them. Choice means being allowed to choose wrongly. Texara nodded. And those who stayed? How do we trust former enemies? Elena was quiet for a moment. The same way they trust us. By choosing to trust despite the risk. By proving every day that cooperation is better than conquest. A chime indicated an incoming message. Texara activated the holographic display, revealing the face of Dr. Chen. The human scientist looked excited. Admiral Captain, she said, I wanted to share our latest research results. The Joint Kethmoran Coalition medical team has made a breakthrough in regenerative therapy. We believe we can help the Zilani regrow their crystal cities. The implications were staggering. The Kethmoran regenerative technology, combined with coalition knowledge, could heal the wounds of war across the galaxy. How long until practical application? Texara asked. 6 months for the first prototype. 2 years for full deployment. The former Kethmoran are very eager to help rebuild what they destroyed. After the communication ended, Elena and Texara stood in comfortable silence. Around them, the galaxy was healing. Trade routes reopened. Refugees returned to rebuilt homeworlds. New alliances formed between species that had never trusted each other before. There's something else I must ask, Texara said. Why did humans choose to help? Your species was in the Kethmoran's path. You could have fled to another galaxy. Why risk everything for strangers? Elena smiled. Because they were not strangers. They were just neighbors we had not met yet. That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters. Humans have a saying, we are stronger together. Not just humans together, but all thinking beings together. The galaxy is more interesting with friends than without them. A new voice joined the conversation as Dr. Lisa Park's hologram appeared beside Dr. Chen's. Captain, Admiral, we have received an interesting communication from the Outer Rim. Another aggressive species has been detected moving toward Coalition space. The Torment Swarm. They appear to be completely hostile to all biological life. Texara felt a familiar chill of fear. Another unstoppable force? Elena's expression remained calm. Perhaps. But this time we have something the galaxy has never had before. What is that? Experience with stopping unstoppable forces. The hologram of Theknor appeared alongside the humans. Captain Vasquez, my people and I would like to volunteer for the diplomatic mission to the Torment Swarm. We understand what it is like to believe you are perfect. Perhaps we can help them discover choice. Elena nodded. I was hoping you would say that, my friend. Texara watched the interaction with amazement. Months ago, these beings had been trying to kill each other. Now they work together to face new challenges. How do you do it? She asked Elena. How do you make enemies into friends? By refusing to believe they have to remain enemies, Elena replied. By showing them alternatives to destruction. By proving that growth is possible, even for those who think they are already perfect. The construction project below them continued. Former warriors and former victims building something new together. The galaxy still faced threats, still had problems to solve, still had conflicts to resolve. But it also had something it had never possessed before. A proven method for turning enemies into allies. The Kethmoran had been unstoppable until they faced humans. Not because humans were stronger or smarter or better armed, but because humans believed that everyone deserved a choice. Everyone deserved a chance to grow beyond what they had been. The unstoppable force had stopped not because it was defeated, but because it chose to stop. Because it discovered that being unstoppable was less important than being alive, being individual, being able to choose its own path among the stars. In her final log entry for the day, Admiral Texara wrote, "The humans have taught the galaxy a valuable lesson. The strongest weapon against any enemy is not force, but the possibility of friendship. The greatest victory is not destroying your opponent, but helping them become something better than they were." Outside the observation window, former enemies worked together to build a better future. The galaxy had learned to hope again, and in the darkness between the stars, new challenges waited. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy faced them not alone, but together. Not as enemies forced to cooperate, but as friends who had chosen to trust each other. The unstoppable force had become an unstoppable movement toward peace, growth, and understanding. And that, Elena thought, was a much better way to be unstoppable.